Okay guys, so math homework for tonight for Mr. Lewis's class is lesson 3 of module 7, and it's on page S16, problems number 1 through 4. So as you can see, problems 1 through 4 right here. And we're talking about square roots and cube roots. Cubed roots were introduced today. So let's take a look at this. So number 1 is asking us find the positive value of x that makes each equation true. Check your solution. Okay, so when I look at these directions, it wants me to find the positive value of x that makes each equation true and to check my solution. So not only am I going to have an answer, but I'm going to show my work to check that answer. So what positive value of x makes the following equation true? X squared equals 289. X squared equals 289. Explain. So it's asking us, what would we have to put in place of this x to make it true? So what squared equals 289? Well, today we talked about in class, the opposite of squaring something is to find the square root of it. So I can very easily find the square root of 289, which should give you my x. So I'm going to write that down so it's fresh in our mind and right in front of us. The opposite of squaring is the square root. So guys, this is basically just like a one-step equation, but instead of like adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, we're dealing with square roots and squaring. But it's just a one-step equation. I'm going to do the opposite or the inverse operation to solve for x. So you guys can grab your calculator, and I need to find the square root of 289. So remember, see if I can lock this so it stops focusing on you. Remember, 289, to find the square root, it's this button right here. The square root of 289 is 17. So I think x equals 17. Don't forget, that's the first part, that's finding the value of x, but I also need to check my solution. So to check my solution, I would just plug 17 in for x, which would look like this: 17 squared equals 289. And we know when we're squaring something, we're timesing it by itself. So 17 times 17 is 289. So that's correct. And then to explain it, there's a third step on this one. Remember, when it says explain, you should use a complete sentence to explain your reasoning. It would say something like, to solve the equation, I need to find the positive value of x so that when it's squared, it is equal to 289. Therefore, I took the square root of both sides of the equation, which gave me 17, and I checked my work by doing 17 squared equals 289. So you need to make sure you have a complete sentence right there, or else you will not get full credit. I walked you through it and explained it. Now you need to explain it yourself in your own words. Okay, let's look at number 2. A square-shaped park has an area of 400 yards squared. What are the dimensions of the park? Write and solve an equation. So, a square-shaped park has an area of 400 yards squared. Okay, so to write that equation, it would be x squared equals 400. Because if you think back to when we were finding area, when you find the area of a square, you write it like this: squared, yard square, so it's yards. So we're trying to find out what the sides are here, and we know if we multiply them and we square them, we get the area. So we know the area is 400. So what are the dimensions of the park? Write and solve an equation. And we can actually, we can square it one time because we know that a square has equal sides. I want to make sure you understand that there. So x squared equals 400. So same thing, we're going to take the square root, the opposite of squaring. We're going to take the square root of 400, which is 20. So I think x equals 20, but it says specifically to check your work. So I'm going to plug that 20 in for that x. 20 squared equals 20 times 20 is 400. Okay, so that is correct. So the square park is 20 yards in length and 20 yards in width. So basically it's 20, 20, 20, 20. And to find the area, we do length times width. Okay. A cube has a volume of 64 inches cubed. What is the measure of one of its sides? Write and solve an equation. So a cube has a volume of 64 inches cubed. What is the measure of one of its sides? Okay, so same thing, we're going to set up our equation. X cubed equals 64. Again, it's telling us the answer. That's why it's equals 64. So now I need to take the cube root of each. Now, unfortunately, cube root's a little trickier because there's not just a button that tells us what it is. So it's really just kind of the process of elimination. So what I like to do is just kind of guess and plug it in. I know that when something is x to the third, it's that number times that number times that number. So say I wanted to see if it was 3. So 3 times 3 times 3 is only 27. So I'm trying to get to 64, so I know it needs to be higher than that. So I'm going to try 4. I tried 3, now I'm going to do 4 times 4 times 4. Oh, 4 cubed equals 64. So x equals 4. Okay? So I just checked my work, solved and checked my work. So basically the cube has a side length of 4 inches. We know it's inches because it tells us right there, inches. So number 4, our last one. What positive value of x makes the following equation true? 125 equals x to the third. Explain. So again, it's to the third, so I know we would write it like this. So it's the cube root. Square root is just like this. I'm not very good at making that, but that's just square root. But if you see it like this, cube root with a 3. Okay? So again, you guys, if you're stuck and you have no idea how to solve this, you know that anything to the third power is that number times that number times that number. So just plug in stuff. So again, let's start with 3. 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. Well, we're trying to get to 125, so it's definitely not 3. Let's jump up to 5. I know that 4 cubed is 64. Let's try 5. So I'm testing out this right here to see what it equals. 5 times 5 times 5. Oh, it's 125. So x equals 5. Again, I just plugged in values and solved until I got 125, and then I knew it was right. So it says to explain. Remember when it says explain, I want a complete sentence. So your sentence would say something like, to solve the equation, I needed to find the positive value of x so that when it's cubed, it's equal to 125. So I took the cube root of both sides of the equation, and the cube root of 125 is 5 because 5 times 5 times 5 equals 125. And make sure you have a complete sentence here and a complete sentence here. And that's your homework for tonight. You also have the worksheet where you're just practicing squaring and cube rooting. That's also due tomorrow, so make sure you get that done as well. Thanks.